Ugh. Why is everything difficult? Hello. Hi, my name is Yolanda and welcome back to my channel. For anyone who has an interest in me as a creator, is to go ahead and read Who is the Bad Art Friend. I'm going to link it down in the description box. My next couple of videos are going to be on this subject. I've been working hard on it. I've done a lot of reading to do the analysis. It's either going to be one epic hour-and-a-half long video or I'm going to break it up. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I've already written 3,000 words. So if you are interested in me at all as a creator, that is what I'm working on. If you're just here to follow along as I rank my Pat McGrath shadows and my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes, the ones that I own. I do not own all of them. I have 12 palettes total, 8 from Pat McGrath Labs and 4 from Natasha Denona. Number 12. And of course I didn't do this. Urgh! I need my phone. Research. Before we get into it, I want to explain. I've been so careful now. I've got my inspiration from watching Alicia Archer, also known as Kinky Sweat, here on YouTube. She did a ranking of her entire Pat McGrath collection and her entire Natasha Denona collection. She may not have it all, but she has a ton of it. And I found it fascinating going through and watching why she ranked things the way that she did. And I'm not entirely sure where I watched my first ranking video. It might have been way back in the day with Makeup Struggles. But Alicia Archer, I'll link her video down below, was recently inspired by Amir Muhammad here on YouTube to revisit the subject. I found Amir Muhammad through Hannah Louise Poston. Okay, that was a lot to get into a ranking video, but I like to give credit where credit is due. There are a bunch of creators here who inform what I buy. 100% of my makeup collection, the 5 years that I've been wearing makeup on a regular basis and buying it on a regular basis, is influenced 100%. Why this is actually a really good exercise for me to do is that this is a quarter of my eyeshadow palette collection in total, and I am starting to figure out I really like. I think part of our purchasing is actually figuring out what our tastes are, and once we figure it out, then maybe we can talk ourselves out of buying a ton of eyeshadow. Let me tell you, this 35% off $250 sale is calling to me. In order for me to make informed decisions about what I'm going to buy from this sale, if I'm going to buy from the sale at all, I thought I would roll through what I have, and maybe this might be helpful for those who are tempted to buy the sale and are curious about what other people have to say. Is my opinion the most informed opinion? Absolutely not. Is it one that I've thought about a lot and I would like to talk about that thinking? Yes. Yes, INTPs love to talk when we're interested. We are going to start with the Blitz Astral Quad in the color Ritualistic Rose. I think this kicks off our fascination with the pinks with Miss Pat McGrath. These are all 4 of her special shades. They are all baked shadows. I have only swatched this. I have never actually used it on the eye. I think that I just don't wear pink enough to really think about this, but I will be wearing more in the pink family as I've picked magenta as one of my colors. This gets ranked last because I've never worn it. Ring those shame bells. I have never worn it on the eye. I'm sure that it's lovely. There's a duochrome, a gold, a bronzy color, and a mauvey pink. Ooh, she's pretty. A mauvey pink here in the corner. So I will be using this more because now I've seen it and it's on camera. Number 11. Let me tell you what a fool I was. I signed up for a suffragist account. I waited up until whatever time midnight this launched. I was also of the belief that these didn't really exist and they were only for influencers. Now, I am now on YouTube. I do not get to call myself an influencer yet, but please like, subscribe, watch all the rest of my videos. I have pretty current stuff, but I also have things that I consider evergreen content. Share, let them know. But also current events and pop culture and the zeitgeist, what have you. I might be bearing my soul here in a minute. Anywho's, right now, eyeshadow. Like this palette? I have worn this palette. I am not compelled by this palette. Also, I think it's just my problem with pinks. I need to investigate them more. Do I regret buying this? No. Okay, I know what effort went into purchasing this palette. I do not regret it, but it ranks really low because I rarely use it. And I rarely am thinking to myself, you know what I want to wear today? This. So on that note, I will put this back. I will do an inventory because honestly, I don't have, like, this would be the backbone of a purple palette for me, which moves us on to number 11, which I like and do use more. Do I use it regularly? No, but there are some truly special shades in here, not in formula, according to what we consider those Blitz Astral shades, but the shimmers in here are fantastic. There are 2 duochromes, and there is something remarkable about the interpretations of gold copper. The purple in here is very vibrant, very shiny. This is a mood. This is one of my favorite one shadow looks if I'm leaning towards a red maroon. It's one of my favorite things to do if I do a monochromatic face with a deep brick lip. Number 11 was Pat McGrath Labs Mothership Star Wars Dark Galaxy. This is number 11. And this is the Star Wars Mothership Galactic Gold. Let me tell you, I'm a fool for Star Wars. I'm, 152 years old, so these were the movies of my childhood. I'm a nerd. When you can match nerdship with geekship, this is what you get. Me waiting up to midnight paying $55 for a palette I do not use on a regular basis, but I am familiar enough to remember what is special about this, and I do use the shadows in here. So we're moving up the list. This is another one of her first run of quads. I had all 3. My daughter absconded with the colorful one. I don't remember the name of it, but this is the Blitz Astral Quad eyeshadow palette in Iconic Illumination. According to the Sephora, these are still available, even though they were released like 3 years ago. I think this is 2018, or maybe 2019. I have started using this on a regular basis. I've gotten into my neutrals. I wear a neutral eye when I wear an eye most of the time nowadays. I get colorful when I'm living my best fantasy life, but if I'm going out or I remember that, hey, I want to play in some makeup. Lately, it has been the murky, warm neutrals. I know. Who am I? Okay, so this is a palette I haven't even swatched. I just bought her. But this is number 8. Pat McGrath's Utopian Dream. I haven't even swatched her yet, but she's only been here for a couple of weeks. What the story behind this is that I was asking my internet friends, my YouTube friends here, what I should do with my $100 Rouge reward. My very first video was, I'm not going to be Rouge anymore after 2021. And that is absolutely true. I didn't shop the sale because I didn't really want to shop the sale. I am divesting from spending $1,000 at Sephora because I can get a better deal elsewhere. Like, once you know that you can get better deals off of your favorite luxury stuff directly from their own site, better deals. It's 35% on the same day the Sephora sale ended. The same day, the very same day, Pat McGrath ended up in my inbox talking about you can get 35% off of the entire line. So knowing that, I used my $100 reward card to pay $25 for this palette. She's beautiful. I haven't gotten into her yet. I'm on the move. I travel a lot. Okay. So she got here right before I went to Vegas. I just got back from Vegas. I've been busy writing content and making content. And so I haven't even swatched, but she is beautiful. And I know that I'm going to use her because I consider her Divine Rose 3, an interpretation of pink that doesn't have too many pinks in it. I'm here for that. So I look at this and I remember what it is that made me fall in love with Pat McGrath palettes in the first place. Opening up and looking at the possibilities. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shadows here, including the multi-chrome. This is the multi-chrome that I can, shadows here that I can do one and done eyeshadows with. There are looks here to be created. She does not look particularly deep in the pan as far as the dark outer corner that I really love. But I've been fooled before by Pat McGrath shadows. They tend to deepen up, especially if they're in the brown shades. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the special shades. I'm excited for the multi-chrome, which I have in other palettes. But there is something that I love about a discrete color story. I realize I do not like large palettes to work from. If I'm going to use a color palette, this is what I want it to be. At most, I just don't like large palettes. Number 7. This is the first mothership that was made, Subliminal. It is the third mothership that I owned. So I lust after palettes for years sometimes. So this didn't reach me until 2020, but I'm a very, very warm-toned girl who loves herself, the contrast of truly neutral and cool tone palettes. I love myself some cool tone shadow. I really, really do. I have to be careful in wearing clothes of these colorings. I don't own a lot of blue. I have to avoid gray. It drowns out my coloring. But on the eyes, because my eyes do something very weird for someone who has very brown eyes, they shift. And depending on what I have on in the light of the day, cool tone shadows look fantastic on me. So I love this palette the same way that I love Utopian Dream, the same way I love my other two motherships. I open this up and I think of things I can do. I get creative and I am a creative person. So this is where we get into the rankings of use. The reason that this is number 7 and not number 2 or number 1 is just a matter of, do I use it on a regular basis? I realize that there are things that I go to time and time again when my brain hurts or that I'm too tired and I have 5 minutes until a Zoom meeting. This isn't the first thing that I reach for, but I think about it a lot. And every time I open it up, I am challenged by it. And I have done some spectacular looks in my free time using this palette. Our first Natasha Denona palette. Now, I talk about these differently. I use them differently. The Natasha Denona palettes. I think I love the formula, I love the colors, I love the color story, I like the mythology of the brand. I don't know Natasha Denona, but I saw her once in person, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I travel with these shadows. The main function of this is not for me to use it as a palette, but to use it as singles, because all of these come out of the palette. So I use my little spatula and I dig into the sides, trying to be very, very careful. If you can see here, If you can see here, little divots from where I got a little clumsy with the shadow. I'm always in these shadows. I use these shadows. I do use these shadows from the palette, but I usually use one shadow from the palette when I think about it. So there are dips in 2/3 of this palette, so 10 of the shadows of the 15. These are tremendous and they work hard for me, but I don't use it as a palette. I use them as singles. And I realize that there's something about my purchasing habits that I will discuss when I do my year-end collection / declutter light, like very light decluttering. I own 41 or 42 palettes at this point, and I think there are a couple that I'm going to depot and a couple that I'm going to give away. But I realized that the function of these are for me to mess with these. One of my favorite things to do is every time Natasha Denona comes out with a new palette is technical difficulties, is to pull these out, rearrange them, and dupe her palettes using mostly her shades. I've been able to do it with her last 3 releases, and letting me know that I do not need to buy new Natasha Denona palettes because I have a healthy singles collection and her own palettes, which eventually you do run out of colorways. You end up with very slight tweaks to varying themes. Doesn't mean that I won't buy from Natasha Denona. I'm just really cautious about having too many of the same thing. I do not want. Eventually, you're going to start duping yourself in your collection, no matter what you do. And so, keeping in theme, I just realized that I pull these palettes to dupe newer releases from her on a regular basis, and I get pretty close. The gold palette. Okay, you need to ask me what drug I'm on before you ever see me get rid of this. So this is number 5. I wanted this palette so badly. Every time I was living in Florida when this was released, every time I went into Sephora, I'd ask them to use this on my eyes. This is when pre-pandemic, before the world ended. I wanted nothing more than the gold palette, and a year went by. I was like, I'm not spending that kind of money. A year and a half, I think I bought this beginning of, or probably, no, I bought this for my Christmas present to myself at the beginning of 2020. So I feel like my want for this was, and it's not disappointed. Again, as I said before, if you see the condition of the shades, I use this palette. I use it a ton. I use the shades in it a ton. Sometimes I use it as a palette because the eye looks that I have this palette are stunning. I think one of them's up on my Instagram. And so I use this all of the time, and I don't get tired of it. This is one of my favorite one and done shadows, as well as this one. They're not in the right place. I keep dismantling these and traveling with these on a regular basis. So they go in my Salt New York palette. I have one of this size. I have 3 more of the larger size, depending on what I can pack or how I am packing. I would hazard a bet that at least one Natasha Denona shadow goes with me everywhere I go. I've traveled a lot with the shadows in this palette. I'm wondering if this is the first, I would say, palette that I own that has 2 functions. So the first function would be to play around with these as signals, but also I do use this as a palette, and it has almost the same effect on me as opening up a mothership. Not quite the feelings of I am an artist, but to be fair to myself, I do think a lot about the possibilities with this palette. This duochrome topper is the topper of life. This is lime chrome. I like using this with my multi-chromes as a topper. chef's kiss for all of those green shadows that I own if I just want to be super sparkly like, and a little bit extra. People have asked me about this shadow on more than one occasion on the street. I don't know why people like talking to me. I don't know why I seem friendly. I don't know. Number 4. This is Midnight Sun. Again, the myth, the mythology, the lead up, the anticipation. I was excited for this. This is not my most used Pat McGrath eyeshadow, but when I'm feeling a little froggy, I love using this. Again, one and done shadows here in the middle. You have your very special shades, which are very, very special. Of all of the Blitz Astral tones, I use this one the most on my face. This is a good brown blush if you want to use it that way. This is one of those good shades of life that you can't tell if it's black or brown when you use it on the eye. I know that it's a brown by looking at it, but it is one of those dusky browns that have some gray tone in it. This is an olive shade of life. It keeps me from buying a lot of olivey palettes because I was like, okay, this is the best version of this, and this is also a very good one and done shadow. It has a little bit of black in the base, so you can just cheat your way to looking like you can blend eyeshadow. It's amazing. The Metropolis palette. Quick story about this palette. I went to something called Sephora when I first got here to LA. So this is 2019. This is pre-pandemic. I just moved here. I was living my best. I love makeup and I love this new place life. I spent money for VIB tickets. I think it was like $350 to go. Natasha Denona released this at, it was basically a beauty con. She released this. I got to see her do makeup on someone of a deeper skin tone. Like, I enjoyed it. She seemed to be very introverted to me, as from someone who's watched people and someone who is deeply introverted, who has given a ton of speeches, who has done a ton of public speaking. It is hard. It is nerve-wracking, and I saw some of what I go through in her presentation, but that's my only judgment of her as a person. It's basically what I could see. I bought this palette there. I bought this palette here. I was excited. The adrenaline was going. I love Art Deco. I love Art Nouveau. I love design in general. Yes, this was the palette. I think of it as two palettes. As I said before, I don't love big palettes, but the function of this for me is to dissect it, take it apart, put it into other palettes. It also has a matrix system. We don't talk about that as far as arrangement of shadows anymore. I know that mine is maybe 1 or 2 shadows off of that, but the essence of what this is supposed to look like is sitting right here. And there is your warm neutrals with a pop of blue, and then you cover that up and you have warm neutrals with some green with a good representation of green, but there are a lot of copper orangey shades here. You can't tell in this lighting, which washes me out a little bit, but it's best to see the shadows in. But in natural daylight, I have the undertone of orange, like Gatorade, okay? It's a Dayglow orange. So these shades complement my skin tone, one and done shadows for me. And I realized something about me in eyeshadow. I don't have very much lid space, okay? I don't have hooded eyes, but I'm aged, okay? In YouTube terms, I'm 776. Realize that most of my looks that get compliment are either really blended out 2 shadow looks. If I'm feeling a little froggy, we'll go in for the inner corner highlight. It's 3 shadows max for me to get the most out of how I perceive myself, what I get out of like taking pictures for the gram, or what people comment when they see me in real life or on video. They were like, what's on your eyes? 9 times out of 10, it's one shadow doing the work of, it's 1 or 2 shadows doing the work of 3 or 4. So that is what I love, especially about this palette. The shimmers in here, but the mattes do all of, and they're deep mattes, deeper in tone, with the exception of this one. But even the light tone is something that's a transition shade for me. So like, I'm like, yeah, I've used this, I've traveled with this, I've rearranged the shadows in this. This is one of my worker palettes. Gold is more of a romantic exercise for me, and I have feelings about it. But if I'm short on time, thinking about, you know, my personality state, who I am, this is one of those palettes I grab when I don't have a lot of time. I don't want to think about what I'm doing, and I can still come out with a stunning look. Number 2, and now I'm wondering, am I basic AF? Probably. The bronze palette. Again, in an emergency, when I don't have any time and I have to be ready to be on front and center to make another meeting about meetings. Oh, I can tell you about Zoom meetings and all of the bullshit that goes into working on Zoom. There's one bum shade in here that's rhodium. I still use her though, like in the hopes that she won't disappoint, but she does each and every time. You want her to be something that she is not. But I love all the rest of these shadows. I have used all of these shadows. If I pan any of the shadows in any of the palettes that I talk about, deep dive, I got distracted. Okay, going back. That suntan, that's not suntan. It's actually deep dive. But deep dive will be something that I pan, and probably sooner than later, looking at like how deep I've gotten into the shadow, comparatively speaking, to all of the other shadows that I've owned. So it's that cream powder formula. If she came out with everything dark, like in this register of dark brown in different colors, I would buy that palette without watching a whole bunch of reviews. And I watch a ton of reviews before I buy just about anything. Actually, that's not entirely true anymore. I've gotten better at knowing myself, which also means that I have slowed down purchasing and become more discerning about what I'm going to buy. And my number 1, Pat McGrath palette. It's Bronze Seduction. Again, I'm really, my coloring is that of a copper penny. That is what I look like. These 4 shadows are all one and done shadows for me. I only have one criticism of this. It's the skin show, which I can't use as a highlighter, or which I can use as a highlighter. I don't think it's particularly flattering because it's a gold highlighter. I am a person of a deeper skin tone who does not like or enjoy gold highlighter. I'm persnickety about what I put on my face. If I have 30 seconds to put something on my eye, this is what I do. So I buff this out all over the eye, and haha, I have a neutral. I have a neutral on my eye. She is sparkly, and I've had people ask. It's not too far off in depth from my own coloring. It's just neutral rather than warm. People notice it on the eye, and I have been asked about this shade more than once, and I'm like, you don't want to know. This is a $125 eyeshadow palette. If you're willing to pay that much for one shade that you like on my eye, hey, worth it. I need to use her more, but I do use her all of the time. I would say of single eyeshadows that I have used over and over and over again, it's these 2 eyeshadows. I have played with the entire palette. I've done a one shadow look using this to do a smoky eye and just buffed out the edges until it blended into my own skin tone. And I have used both of these as single eyeshadows. So this is my number 1. This is my Bronze Seduction. Like, without it, I would buy it again. Thank you for coming, for listening to me ramble on about eyeshadow. I will be back with WWN episode 2. As I said before, you have homework that you have to do. Please like, comment, subscribe if I haven't said so already.